immediately. So good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for joining this special Carnegie Mellon Mumbai interview with Kunal Shah, founder of Cred. My name is Aashay Doshi, and I'll be hosting today's interview along with Anup Doshi, who will be running Q&A. Before we start, I want to invite Rekha Koita to say a few words of welcome to Kunal, as well as all our guests. So, Rekha.
Thank you, Aashay. And thank you, Kunal, for joining us today. I mean, we're really excited to have you here. And I also want to thank all our attendees for taking time out, today. It's a Thursday evening, and I'm really happy to see all of you here. I'm sure you will find this session really interesting. I personally also just want to say that I think this topic, right, for financial literacy and inclusion is something which is so important. And I mean, to me personally, it's very close to my heart because I think it's something which is really required in our country, definitely, and across all socioeconomic strata. So I have seen so many people, especially women from the marginalized communities where I work to the more elite women, right, get into trouble due to lack of, this whole financial literacy. So I think I personally feel very strongly about it, and I'm really happy to kind of, have Kunal on board here, and really looking forward to hearing you. So let me just hand it back to Aashay. And Aashay, thank you for all your effort, as always, in curating this session. And thank you to Anup for helping out.
Thank you, Rekha. And Kunal, like Rekha mentioned, we are in extremely exciting digital and financial times today. 80% of the country has bank accounts. UPI is recording 2 billion transactions a month. But now the question is, how do we take it to the next level as a country in terms of financial literacy, inclusion, sophistication of financial instruments? So for everyone, Kunal needs no introduction. He's the founder of Cred that processes around 25 to 27% of India's credit card payments today. It has a user base of 7.5 million users with credit scores above 750. Kunal, you've also been a founder of FreeCharge earlier, which you sold for $450 million. Kunal's been financially independent since he was 16, which is amazing. And he's also an angel investor with 200 startups. So today we're going to talk about financial literacy. Before we start, Kunal, would love for you to give a few words of welcome to our community. And thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you so much for having me. These are exciting times, and every exciting times are also confusing times. If you guys are feeling a strong sense of irrelevance, I must say that the feeling is mutual. Every single person should be feeling that because the world is changing at a rate faster than our ability to understand, our ability to react, and our ability to adapt. Happy to keep this session to be more interactive. My biggest worry remains financial literacy because world has become like a superconductor where information, ideas, money can seamlessly move between geographies, people in a way we have never imagined before. And in these times, if you do not really understand how money works and how money compounds and how wealth works, we are likely to get disrupted in manners we can never imagine. And nobody's safe.
Right.
And I think the bigger challenge is that for most people who are poor, they struggle with financial literacy. But I have seen that even the most smartest people in this country who seem to have high income also have terrible financial literacy. And we are not likely to recover from these situations. A lot of times we realize that, just because we make more income, we'll have more wealth. That is not necessarily true. And I think we are in a time where everything looks perfect, everything looks interesting, but the fact is India's per capita income has dropped in the last 2 years. Yep. Bangladesh's per capita income has grown dramatically in the last 6-7 years, even beating India, which means very soon Indians will be seen to be moving to Bangladesh and they will be throwing us out.
As well as a median income as well, right?
Yeah, the per capita on all bases has gone up. Less than 6% of urban Indian women have financial independence and income in India. That number is nearly 68 to 70% in that market. So we tend to be. I have a strong feeling that India, and especially a lot of us Indians, are especially delusioned in understanding macroeconomic situation and data.
Right.
And financial literacy seems to be the need of the hour, not from the bottom and thinking that, okay, we need to teach our maid and drivers. I think most of us are completely caught off guard over here. And just because we've invested something in the stock market and have built some wealth doesn't mean we'll be able to keep that wealth if you don't understand how basics work.
Absolutely. I think those are some very startling stats. And in addition to per capita income, our median income is also only $600. So that is something that is super worrying. So Kunal, let's jump straight into it. In one of your articles, you said, the engine of financial inclusion needs the oil of financial literacy. We have 27% people who are financially literate in the country, according to RBI. So this is my hypothesis, and you can poke holes in it, is that our judiciary system, we've never been able to, we have too many cases outstanding, too few judges, too many lawyers, and people rely on their own relations and own society and community for financial decisions because of that. So why do you think we are so good at math and bad at money, culturally?
Because we think they are one and the same when they are not, number one. Number two, we never discuss that in the family, except a few business families. Most of the country never discusses money.
Right.
It is considered to be a topic which is almost taboo. People silently suffer in debt, don't necessarily understand how, and because female independence of finance is less, men tend to take a lot more risky behavior because women do not have equal control on finances. If you look at everywhere, women tend to be ones who build households, build families, build more stable wealth options.
Correct.
Men naturally have a tendency of finding one or the other version of taking high risk bets, which may not be ideal to grow. So I think my view is that we've been terrible at some of these things because it's not discussed. We've never had this in our school. I can bet my life that majority of salaried employees will not know what is inflation and how does it impact their life.
Retail inflation.
And I don't think they're likely to even understand what is the impact of inflation on their saving account. Majority, one scary fact is that 70 to 80% of wealth, retail deposit, which is between saving account and fixed deposits, is stuck in 30 million accounts, which has majority of the money. I would say even 60-70% of all retail deposits are in just 30 million accounts. And most of the salaried people are not investing, keeping the money in the saving account, and not realizing that inflation is much more. Like my guess is urban inflation is probably at 7-8%. And if you're earning 2.5%, 3% in your bank account, your wealth is going down every single year without you realizing it.
Correct.
And these concepts were not taught because we were told to become good at math, engineering, or doctor banna hai, but we thought commerce and accounting and personal finance are topics for commerce students to do.
Right.
But the problem is even commerce students don't understand what it means.
Yeah.
Akshay, Aashay, I have a feedback. When you're speaking and acknowledging, I get 3 echoes, so I get like disrupted. So maybe stay on mute when I'm speaking because it's just very jarring. Sorry for that.
Sounds good. I'll stay on mute. But just to add on to that, Kunal, where the Gurukul system was concerned, I studied undergrad in the US, and I was talking to my professors that mujhe business padhna hai. I'm a business undergrad student. Why am I studying philosophy? Why am I studying media classes? He said, we've actually adopted your Gurukul system and modernized it. So what needs to change on a content level in terms of education, like the new NEP, new education policy, to infuse capitalism and financial literacy into the curriculum?
Well, first of all, start talking about it. I think the first thing that can be done is parents talk about these topics with their kids and through that actually understand if they know enough. If they can teach their kids, we can assume that they're in a safe place. Most people can't tell their kids what difference between capitalism and socialism is. And I can say that for majority of Indians, we don't understand what capitalism is. We don't understand if MRP is a good thing or a bad thing. If you ask the most smartest people, smartest businessmen, they'll say MRP is a good thing, but they don't understand that. Then they don't understand what is capitalism, right? Why is person staying in Valkeshwar paying the same for distillery like somebody who's staying in, let's say, slums of Dharavi? It doesn't make sense. But we have MRP, and the benefit of that is not really going to the poor; it's going to the rich, and we don't understand these things, right? So my view is that these are deeper issues, and I don't think anybody really has spent time to deeply understand what capitalism is. I think we all of us have a deep blood of socialism and trying to play the game of capitalism, which makes the game slightly harder. Also, what I've noticed is that in curriculum to be included, first we have to accept that capitalism is the way to go. And we have to accept that money is important and not a taboo topic that we should be ashamed to talk about. And not just calculate compound interest, but talk about impact of compound interest on your life, right? Beyond that, I think making it a mainstream conversation, right? Unlimited movies have been made on autobiographies of athletes and artists. And how many businessmen's biographies have we made? How many of us know history of, let's say, top 500 businessmen of India? And historically how they created wealth? We have no clue, right? I'll give you a fun fact. I don't know if you know about this, but do you know the story of Rajabai Tower, Aashay? Which is
Rajabai Tower.
Are you in Bombay?
Yeah, I'm based in Bombay. Yeah.
At Bombay University has Rajabai Tower next to it, a big tower next to it,
Correct.
Which is opposite Maidan. Rajabai
they call
Tower
it the Big Ben.
Rajabai Tower was built by Premchand Roychand. He used to be the richest person in India at one point of time, almost the most richest broker in the world. And he was also the founder of Bombay Stock Exchange. And he made the tower by spending millions of dollars at that point of time for his mom, Rajabai, who could not see. And she had to do 6 p.m. Chauviyar as per Jains. And to hear time, he made that clock for her. Now, how many Indians and how many Gujaratis would know about this? Because we've never continued these stories, but we know story about every artist, every athlete. So the question is, how many are our civilian awards given to businessmen? Is that something that is of celebration or not? And I think this is, by the way, interesting thing I found out. I was reading some interesting article by Devdutt Patnaik. We said that the word Vaishya and word Vaishya actually has the same origin. So we tend to attribute people who do business to be of a lower order. And that is deeply cultural.
Absolutely. And now that you mention it, I can only remember Guru as a movie that, glorifies businessmen. Otherwise, it's mostly been the movies of the 70s always painted the businessman as the bad guy. And
even now, like the series that becomes hit on business is Scam 92. But what about all the people who have created millions of jobs? What about people who have made hospital chains? What about people who have created millions of jobs for organized or unorganized players? So the question is that these are not interesting stories for us.
Absolutely. And it's funny. So I work in agriculture, an agriculture startup. 2 weeks ago, I was in Pandharpur, which is, a small town. And the local MLA had the number plate of 5555. So you saw 80% of the cars on the road ended with 55. 80% of the cars on the road were white in color and people were white. So I think our priorities on who we worship has...
It is true. By the way, if you go to Indonesia, it's exactly the opposite. Every car is black because all the MLA's cars over there are black. Are you on mute?
Yeah, I thought it was a very interesting dichotomy that we don't worship our wealth creators. I think you also mentioned in Portugal where you saw Vasco da Gama statue in the church because he was an explorer. But Indians, we glorify superstars, we glorify politicians. But I think hopefully with the next generation, I know you're a legend on Twitter. So hopefully, people start respecting and revering that.
I think we have a long way to go. I don't think it can be solved magically. For example, if you're an entrepreneur, it's not so easy to now get married, and especially in an arranged marriage situation, and there, except in business communities where it is appreciated and respected, unless we solve the society's cultural DNA, saying that, first of all, we still have 90-95% arranged marriages. I don't know why, but it continues to exist. In arranged marriages, I don't think parents are going to, especially if you're getting a daughter married, would prefer to have somebody who has unstable path ahead of them, right? So by desire, we are systematically looking for more stable jobs. So the desire for government jobs is going to remain systematically high because you believe that you are less likely to have a good, successful marriage or be able to marry somebody well, if depending on that. So it's a very complex equation to be solved. And especially with like 95% of urban women not contributing to the workforce and having independent income, the need to find a more stable partner is going to be pronounced, which will again stop entrepreneurship. So the rabbit hole goes quite deep.
Absolutely. And I was actually, our previous interview last month was with Debjani Ghosh of NASSCOM, and she spoke about them running large scale reskilling and upskilling programs for women for, digital training, AI, ML. You've spoken a lot about brain drain, like, smartest people are leaving the country. Do you think we have that scale and potential to teach the raw talent that exists in the country, get women back to working in the workforce? And what is the government role in that to implement to get women in the workforce?
Aashay, let me ask you a question. What percentage of your classmates, female classmates in your college, are currently having their independent income right now?
I would say it would be around, say, 40%, given
40%?
Yeah.
That seems very high, by the way. That is great. You think the 60% were not skilled?
No, I don't think they were not skilled. I just think they dropped out of the workforce.
So the question is that, are we culturally accepting somebody who's more educated to be out there in the workforce? A lot of people who do MBA and start taking care of the kids because the family thinks that why would you leave your kid alone and do a job? Problem kya hai life mein? And the thing is that we are systematically slowing down growth of women by kind of guilt tripping them in name of family, kids, all of that. And yes, they are likely to naturally fall for that, because imagine you are a 10% crowd which is working right now, and there is a parent teacher meeting that is organized in the middle of the day. So what are you likely to feel about yourself and your kid? Then I'm not a good mother. But fathers are excluded from parent teacher meeting. Aapko kaam hoga. So we have created a caste system without realizing that we have created a caste system.
Absolutely. And that is extremely alarming. You also spoke about, so even bank account usage, there's a gap of 11% between men and women. I think for Cred specifically, getting more women into the financial system, the RBI estimates that if you address 100 million low-income women, there'll be 25,000 crores of new deposits in the financial system. So my terms of thinking is that at a cult, like, do businesses like Cred take on the onus, and startups or investing in education, investing in universities to change this mindset? How do we get out of this hole?
I don't know where to start, to be very honest, but I think starting early is important. How many of us were taught anything about capitalism? How many of us have studied capitalism for more than 2 hours in our entire life to know how this game is played? And all of us are playing the game of capitalism with no clue how this works, right? And therefore we have silly understanding of how money works or what are supposed to do. I think we can start with school. We can make an impact at multiple levels in terms of interventions, even offices, right? It may not be a bad time to teach capitalism or wealth or how inflation works, right? All of the people who are attending over here, if I ask majority of your team members in your office, what is their understanding of inflation? How many of them will accurately know what is inflation and how does it impact their life? right? And that is the bigger problem. How many of them would know clearly the correlation between inflation and their bank deposit or fixed deposit? If you do not understand the correlation between bank deposit or fixed deposit and inflation, do you really think that you can change wealth? So I think there is a bigger issue that needs to be taught. And I'm not even talking about, like, say, the mass India. In the top 100 million Indians, which seem to be of higher income group and can speak English and can communicate and learn, even they, and by the way, these are graduates who have no clue how money works. So getting the unorganized sector women to start having some income, that seems like a very long shot, when majority of the people who are currently there, and we can't keep protecting people. If see, you can keep creating, saying, yeah, let's put this restriction, this rule, this intervention by SEBI, this intervention by RBI, whatever. But what if people just don't know what is financial literacy, right? I was recently like coming across an article like Indians probably lose like 800 to 1,000 crores to some Nigerian scams every year. So how do we stop it if people are not trained, right? It's like, it's like basically you are not teaching the kid the importance of keeping safe when you are at a height to fall, but you're constantly creating new guardrails. But when the kid doesn't know, so they'll keep finding ways to again fall.
Right.
So are we supposed to teach the kid how to not fall, or keep creating all these guardrails so that they don't fall?
I think that's a profound question. And to your point, I feel like even among my circles, the only solution to investing is FD mein rakh do. But FD mein 6%, 7% you're getting versus your retail inflation goes to 8, 9%, you're still losing money. So I think it runs much deeper into it. So do you think there's a lack of willingness to learn? Because if you really want to learn something, YouTube, Stanford, MIT, financial, you can learn if you want to learn. But again, I'm traveling to tier 2 cities for my work. I ask my employees, the children, whole day they're on 4G, PUBG, games khel rahe. But how do we balance this willingness to learn versus availability of learning and access?
I wish I knew good answers to that question. I just wish. What are the clean methods to do that? I think the first thing is to encourage understanding beyond curriculum. Let's put it this way, right? Let's say we are talking about kids for a second over here. We think anybody who shows random curiosity in our household who's young, we tell them, "Arey, itna dimag padhai mein lagega to full marks aa jayega." And there is constant shaming on random curiosity. So how do we expect them to be curious about anything? How many people who have invested in crypto know anything about crypto?
Correct.
And what do you think is going to be the impact when market severely corrects itself over there? Will they know what to do, or will they blame themselves and move on?
Yep. I think with the new advertisements of Coin DCX and all those coming up, I know so many people who've invested in crypto without having any idea. And you constantly mention Israel as a topic where mothers asking children, like, what is the most insightful question you asked in class today versus aaj kya kiya, homework kya hai. And I was talking to Devjani Ghosh of NASCOM. She said the mother in Israel wants the children to become a Nobel Prize winner. और हमारे में it's like marks कितने आए, tuition जाना है. So I think that grassroots level change. What's your take on that?
I don't think there is a problem about people have been focused on marks lana hai because they have seen that gets the kids out of the middle class trap and makes them slightly more affluent. The problem is that do we have general curiosity? For example, there are two or three things that are problematic. As a culture, we do not allow any questioning to somebody who's elder or with somebody with more status, right? कि तुम बहुत छोटे हो, you are not supposed to speak amongst elders, right? And therefore, most young people will never counter a stupid view on a WhatsApp group of family because they are fearful that the family will get upset about them trying to call out some nonsense, right? That's one. Two is, do we really want to seek truth? How many of us will be allowed to question religion or God or how things work, right? Or question the COVID protocols? Logic is not appreciated in many times, right? The third thing is, over a period of time, if you have only demonstrated how to control young, they will do the same thing to their young as well. Do you think a kid who has been over-disciplined and told to not question will ever raise a kid which genuinely allows a lot of questioning? And therefore, most Indians, when they go to study abroad, they are like, I can't believe you learn this way. I can't believe this is how you can ask a professor or you can question a professor or argue with them. So we are long way to go from that. And I think most people are just kind of unaware. Like a lot of people still use the word, yeah, I'm not very good at tech. Can you do anything in future without being good at tech? Can you earn anything without being good at tech?
Right. I mean, you are a great example. You are a BA in philosophy and an MBA dropout from NM, and now you created arguably one of the most advanced tech companies in India. So I think it comes down to the willingness to learn. You mentioned something interesting about religion. So I'm Gujarati, as are you. When we were kids, we were told to do Paryushan, the fasting and everything. And we always rebelled, right? Kyun karna hai, kya karna hai? Now we see a Netflix documentary on intermittent fasting. Now everyone is following intermittent fasting, even though my dadi and all of them already did it years ago. So at some point, I guess religion was used to scale good behavior and became dogmatic to a point. I think we are at that place for something like financial literacy. To how do you scale that by logic and explanation versus yahi karna hai, or like you are forced to do this. I think that might be one of the big challenges.
I think there is a unique curse that all the people who eventually become super evolved will have low birth rate and they start phasing out. You will notice that strong correlation in people who get fully aware and become higher IQ, they tend to have lower birth rates. And systematically, the world keeps correcting itself in many ways in dogmatic stuff. Like, for example, how many people would truly understand what Jainism means? And how many people have actually studied it versus following some ritual processes? You don't know why they exist and why should they exist. For example, if you study history of Jainism as a religion, you will find out it was a rebellious behavior against people's belief in God, right? And it was supposed to be an atheistic approach towards life. But then now we feel that, oh, wo bol raha hai Jai Shri Krishna, so we should be saying something. So we figured out, oh, we should say Jai Janendra. Who the hell came up with that? I don't think it was there in any book to be said these things. And I think that's where the magical stuff of over a period of time, society self-corrects to normalize to almost equality every now and then.
Absolutely. I think that's a very, very unique take, Kunal. So I wanted to move the conversation on to the fourth part, which is Cred Mint and India's wealth-driven society. So with Cred Mint, you've started a P2P lending platform for qualified users. Now, this has existed informally in society for ages. And so Gujarati community, Marwadi community, the money lenders lending to everyone. Now this is formalizing this in a way that is institutionalized. Now I'll go back to my hypothesis, which please poke holes in that, is that because of a lack in faith in institutions, India may return off capital is tougher than return on capital. Trust is low, so that we lend in our community, we only trust our community, we don't trust the banks. We have 4 crore cases that are outstanding in the court. Court mein jao, kya karoge? What are you going to do? Time lagega, you're not going to be able to solve anything. So how are you thinking of scaling this behavior change? I think this is fundamentally a DNA change that you're trying to change.
I think it's a good point. First of all, rewarding good financial behavior and thinking that that opens up my life dramatically is super important, right? Unless you think like that, you are not going to be interested in good financial behavior, right? And therefore, my view is that individuals are likely to behave much better than, let's say, businesses, hypothetically, because you can get away with a big thing, and let's say you can get stuck in a legal case over there. But let's say an individual, right? What if, I'm just hypothesizing over here, for example, let's say you could not travel to any other country if you do not have a good credit score. What if you could not get insurance at a lower cost if you do not have a good credit score? What if no landlord will rent you an apartment till you have a good credit score? And a lot of these things happen everywhere in the developed world. But for Indians, these things appear to be alien concepts. How do we look at a tenant and a landlord? They'll call you, we'll dress up nicely that day so that they don't judge us. We can't go in shorts and wear a torn t-shirt. We'll dress up properly. And women even see more pronounced behavior. They will dress up properly in Indian so that people don't think that they are doing some bad behavior in the apartment. How is this scalable? And by the way, after that, we take 8 months deposit. And what do we do with that deposit? It keeps lying in our bank account. So the view is that we really, really need to think about life in a very different way for it to succeed. And I think the moment we change the markers of trust, right? For example, we don't need, how did India become so big on gold, right? And if you go to history of gold, you realize that India had probably 14 demonetizations in its history. And naturally, we trusted gold a lot more because it was only currency that was free of regimes, right? Today, India has approximately 15% of the world's gold in retail India. That's approximately probably $1.5 trillion or $1 trillion. I don't know what the number is. That's half of our GDP. And more interesting data is the second largest imported item in India after petrol or oil is gold. So the question is that, what are we really doing? Is gold an instrument of mistrust? And I think that's where things get tricky and intricate, that do we have the trust in a regime to kind of do more and more? And unless we think in that level of landscape, we are likely to just think short term and get surprised. We should not forget that 10 years ago, most people did not have a smartphone. And 15 odd years ago, most people had no clue what internet meant. And we don't even know what's going to come at the rate of every 2-3 years going forward.
Absolutely. And I think people who don't adapt, eventually will fall off the curve. And I think the point of gold raises a good segue into the consumption angle, because gold was used as a, safety and anti-volatile asset. If, the government goes wild, if the currency goes wild, this is a safe haven. But now if you want to push a consumption-based economy like the West, living on credit, I think we'll differ on this take right here, that Indian weddings, right? We spend so much on weddings. An Indian typical business family will spend on weddings, cars, houses. My argument is that during an Indian wedding, you're generating employment, you are pushing money in the system for DJs, choreographers, artists, etc. That's making money flow in the system. Do you think the West has got it right? Black Friday sale, Thanksgiving sale, Christmas gift. They've centered an economy around consumption, which we do in terms of like weddings, as well as some festivals like, Diwali. How do we scale a consumption model?
The question is that, do we believe in it? first of all, I don't know if India truly believes in consumption as a thing, right? For example, I recently found out that South Korea used to give income tax rebates for spends on credit card. So that tells me that they are super clear that this has to become a consumption economy and it has to grow. Do you think we would ever do something like that? Uh, uh, and for example, UPI has grown because it's been made free. Is that capitalism? So the question is that, do we truly understand how capitalism and consumption economy works? My view is that the understanding of that is limited, and which creates concentration of trust in a fewer entities, right? And therefore you'll see conglomerates largely emerge in low trust nations, right? Where one company can do salt from car to furniture to app and everybody uses it because you trust very few people, right? And I think unless we truly understand and address it, we are less likely to be successful, right? And for us, familiarity of faces, brands, आपका बड़ा building है कि नहीं है, are more important things, right? Like for example, jewelry stores that have huge doors tend to attract customers who don't bargain too much because we think that ये तो बड़े लोग होंगे, but we don't know if they're really offering us pure gold or no pure gold. We don't understand these things. So my worry is the nuances are something that will come when we are truly interested in these nuances, are curious about people who are creating wealth, are curious about wealthy societies, right? If you ask anybody, is Indian culture the best culture? Everybody will vehemently agree in India. But if you ask them, how many other cultures have you studied or experienced or been through? The answer is zero. So how do we know?
So, well, why do we have this ego? Because everywhere, again, I'll take my example down to tier 2 India, izzat dikti hai. You give someone izzat, then doesn't matter what money, everything is, izzat is the main thing. Why are we so insecure, or why do we have such an ego?
I think at humans at primitive level care a lot more about status, and wealth is a trained behavior, right? Because the way to get prestige through wealth is a long path, right? वो बहुत मेहनत करना पड़ेगा, काम करना पड़ेगा, पढ़ाई करना पड़ेगा, then you will have a car, then you will have something. But let's say I make you proud about anything, it's the fastest hack, right? Even if you look at politics, it is much easier to make people proud of their past than worry about their future, right? And therefore we should not be surprised when politics is done on caste or religion or language or city name or subsection name, because it gives you identity and pride in things that don't matter, right? And you can easily own somebody and control somebody if you can make them proud about their past. It's very hard to get loyalty from people when you make them insecure about their future. So the question is that I'll give you a classic example. Like all this country, every now and then people worry about petrol pricing, ye wo, right? And I ask people that what do you think the inflation is on Pani Puri's price in India? How many X has Pani Puri's price gone up in the last 20 years versus petrol? And we don't know. But it is a topic to rebel against. And these are the smartest people who are stuck on, अरे petrol price इतना बढ़ गया, ये बढ़ गया, but boss, पानी पूरी का price कितना बढ़ गया? Nobody's in the math of that. And this is the same cohort which will go and spend, let's say, 200 or 300 rupees having a coffee somewhere.
Right.
But I think the moment we make people not have the ability to think independently, how many people in India can think independently and have a counter view, right? Most people love to agree over here. If you write anything on LinkedIn, 200 people will say, I agree, I agree, I agree. You don't see that in any other culture of writing, I agree. So as a collectivist society, affiliation is a lot more important than questioning, countering. Philosophy cannot thrive in a society where you are not interested in seeking truth.
Do you think that changes? So before we jump into the Q&A, do you think that changes with wealth creation once people become more individualistic? I think you mentioned an example where living room furniture had 3x the margin of bedroom furniture, because we like to show people that we are, up there, but individually we don't take care of ourselves. So do you think as our per capita or median wealth rises, this collectivist approach dissipates? And are we ready for that, say in 2045, when we are a credit-fueled society, individualistic?
It is only possible when we adopt capitalism in its entirety and not in parts. You can't have credit-fueled society and also have MRP. So are we
a quick point on that? So when I was in the US, I used to see the gas station, the petrol pumps. With the gas station opposite each other will have different prices. And I was wondering, okay, why, like it's in the same area, they have different prices. I go down 20 miles down the road, is a different price. And then also in India, all prices of fuel are the same at all petrol pumps. So where's the business, right? But now that you contextualize it, that MRP, like why shouldn't someone...
And imagine you have a petrol pump in South Bombay, or you have it in Dahisar Cheknaka, the cost of fuel is the same. So rent kaise afford karoge?
Yeah.
So we don't ask and question these things. We are far away from realizing and understanding some of these things.
Absolutely. Kunal, before we go into Q&A, wanted to ask, do you have a hard stop at 7:30?
Yes, that is true.
Okay, sounds good. So what we'll do, and if you don't mind, we go into a Q&A section. We allow people to unmute themselves. Are you okay with that, or should we just read the question?
That's okay. As long as somebody is moderating, who should come? Otherwise, everybody starts speaking together.
Yeah. So Anup, can you kickstart the Q&A?
Sure. Thanks. Thanks, Kunal, for your time. Let's get, since we have only 15 more minutes, let's quickly get into it. Rajesh Dume has a question for you about startups. Aashay, can you unmute her?
Yeah, Rajesh, go ahead.
Yeah, hi, Kunal. First of all, I think congratulations, and I've learned about your Delta 4 theory. It's brilliant because it talks about how the new solutions are far more efficient than the what people were used to earlier, and therefore there is a stickiness. And certainly, therefore, the consequence of that is the UBP that you call, which is again a phenomenal term, because everybody has been used to USP. UBP is unique pragmatic proposition. The question that I have for you is, can I start my video as well, if you permit?
No, we can just do, in interest of time, let's move with this.
The question is very simple. Me and my twin brother, we have started a consumer tech company. And the question is, for how long we can continue to burn capital without having a visibility on profitability and from the operations, cash flows from the operation. I think that's the question I have for you, Kunal.
Issue. Can you repeat the question quickly, if you don't mind?
Yeah, I will. I will just repeat the question quickly. As I said, we have launched the consumer tech company. Our question is for how long we can continue to burn capital without generating operating cash flows, given that VCs and PEs are now increasingly putting pressure on founders to generate profitability rather than just GMV, GTV, for example, WeWork.
I don't think that statement is true. If your distribution is growing at a healthy rate and your cost of customer acquisition is dropping or staying stable, and there is a potential to monetize, which is quite evident. There are many businesses that have managed to keep the cost of distribution high and all of that. If your business fundamentally does not have appetite of investors to support you for distribution, or your business does not seem to have the potential where you prove the monetization to prove that at scale this will make sense, nobody's likely to support it. So I don't think that is a true statement that increasingly people are asking that. First of all, WeWork was called out because it was positioning itself as a tech business when it was purely a real estate business. So I don't think this is a fair example.
Sound good. Thanks, Kunal. Anup, in the interest of time, just read the questions. Yeah, so that we have maximized Kunal's time.
Sure thing. I think Rashmi has a question here. The stock market seems to be unrelated to macroeconomic fundamentals. Even financial literacy may not help in these times. How is fintech preparing, educating consumer about eventual market corrections?
That's a great question. I often tweet about it personally. I don't think fintechs may necessarily be incentivized if your business is to get people to trade more, buy more. And therefore, I remain fundamentally conflicted that would I ever sell something that I would not tell my family to do? And I think as a rule, we've made a simple rule in Cred that we would not launch a product that we would not give it to our closest family members to use and buy and take care of. For example, Cred Mint, that the product we launched, which gives you 9%, up to 9% to invest in other members of Cred. We launched it internally. Till 80% of our team members used it for 3 or months. We did not launch it for public. So our view is that we are doing the right safeguarding on ourselves, but I don't know how you can prevent other people. That's the role of a regulator, but I don't think fintechs are going to be necessarily incentivized to tell people to be cautious, except putting that warning at the end. And I don't know if telling people to keep money in fixed deposit is also a good idea at the same time. So the question is that how do you teach people discretion? I wish I knew better. We are seriously considering how to invest as a company behind these things, and hopefully in a few weeks or months we'll come up with a program for that.
Awesome.
Thanks. Yeah, I mean, asset allocation is a big thing. Speaking of which, Capital Mind, I heard your podcast on it, and I was very the way you've use credit score to build trust is a very interesting way of doing the P2P lending, right? And yeah, I mean, that makes sense. And dog fooding your own product before giving it to other people. Vinod has a question about, again, literacy in fintech. Teaching finance in schools can be a start, but considering how teaching maths has worked, it needs smart curriculum and interested teachers. Can we trust traditional teaching methods to do the job?
Can we trust traditional education to teach anything at all? So it's a more fundamental question. My question is slightly more fundamental. With Zoom, when millions of people can watch and learn, why shouldn't the best math teacher teach math to everybody? Why shouldn't the best physics teacher teach physics to everybody? And are we likely to see a complete reform on education where ultimately the best one win? I'll give you a small example. And this is maybe a terrible analogy, but it's still relevant. In the past, in ancient times, the person who used to entertain used to earn less than person who used to get entertained, right? But as they got stage, they started becoming more wealthy. And then the person who was on stage was sometimes earning equal amount of money than the person who was watching. As the stages became bigger, let's say television as a stage coming up, suddenly the person who was performing on television was making more money than most people who are watching television. Internet made this gap even bigger. Why hasn't that happened in education? And my view is that that's likely to happen. And a lot of people will eventually want to learn with the best person. And it's only a matter of time where we may realize that we were not taught by the best in the world.
So Kunal, what does that do to the millions of other teachers on the local, if everyone can learn from Kunal Shah, what happens to the rest?
Millions of artists used to do shows in gaos before. Now most people spend their time on some app and spending time. They don't go and watch a Lavani or a show. What happened to them? So the question is that every time a more efficient behavior will come and people have to change their professions.
Interesting point.
We have a more technical question. So by Shabham, where do you see India's fintech stack evolving to in the coming years? So
I think
payments, UPI.
I think first is the first was forget about the words fintech, stack, whatever. Anything that is inefficient will become more efficient. That's it. Stop using all these labels, fintech, stack, AI. No. Everything that is inefficient and you feel the inefficiency will become efficient. In 5 years, and by the way, even then you will feel it's inefficient.
Got it. So where do you see the biggest opportunities that lie in enabling the next billion users of fintech?
Take a human motivation that people have at scale, either in terms of desire or in terms of volume of people who have that desire, and make it extremely easy for them to achieve that motivation. Looking for दो mantra बता दो कि एक दो tip कौन सा business करना चाहिए, that's never going to be a great way of building business. The question is, do you understand what do people want? And can you make it really easy for them to achieve that?
Absolutely. No, we want to pick up the crypto question.
Sure. A lot of people actually ask this in the stack. Umang and Amit, what is your take on cryptocurrency? You said people don't understand it, so should they invest?
To quickly add to that, Kunal.
Sorry, go ahead.
To quickly add to that, we were interviewing Ashish Doshi, who's the BSE MD and CEO, and he thinks it's a scam. His point was, if anyone can mine it, who owns it? And if everyone can mine it, then how is it actually a currency? But yeah, go ahead.
I'm not going to go into technicalities of it, but I'll tell you one simple logical framework to think about. Historically, people were hiding their taxes by storing their wealth in real estate, gold, and so on and so forth. Now, if you can figure out a way to put that in crypto and now go out of the country without any trace, I think the risk is even bigger on some of those things than worrying about isme invest karna hai ki nahi karna hai, right? A country can lose all its wealth in no time, right? It is not uncommon for business communities to have an option of pay cash and get crypto at 5% extra. That's going to happen. And that's happened with gold in the past, but gold used to have a problem of smuggling and you can get stopped at the airport. How will you stop crypto? That's one. Two is, I don't know. I don't own any crypto, so I cannot comment on this to point of is it a good investment asset or not. But my view is very simple. How does gold make sense? It's a random metal that we've all agreed to assign value to. So ultimately, when humans agree to one protocol to create trust on, it can be a country, it can be a currency, it can be a metal. And to me, the answer is very simple. If the number of believers of the belief system is growing every day, can we truly consider it to be an anomaly? And who knows what scam means? If most people want to, how do we know a country is not a scam? How do we know a currency is not a scam? How do we know stock market is not a scam? Like the question is that there's a regulator that controls it. In this case, there is no regulator because it seems to be operating on human will in some ways. And I don't know what that means. It can have dangerous consequences. For example, a market operator could crash the price, take people's wealth away, and then increase the price again, which can be happening. I don't know. So the question is that if you look at villages became cities, cities became countries, countries became bigger things by adopting common protocol. To me, crypto is same as English as a language. How are we all able to communicate in one language? It's a common protocol. We all have learned it and we've all accepted as a way of communication. And we come from different backgrounds. I may be speaking Gujarati, Hindi, Marathi, all these different languages that we have at home. But we agreed to a common protocol that seems to be English. And the number of DAUs of English is growing every day in the world. If English was monetizable, our usage of English was monetizable, would we question that?
Right, right. And Kunal, we're at time.
I'm not answering the question because I don't know enough, but I can tell you one thing. When humans figure out a way to trust each other without help of third parties, crazy things have happened in history.
Absolutely. I think, Kunal, we are at time. So before we leave, just one question and then we'll end it. This is what Peter Thiel also asks, is what is one universal truth that you believe that most people disagree with you on?
Peter Thiel has not told you that you should never tell this in public, and you should be building businesses on top of that. So the answer is that is if all that I know, I'll be building stuff on.
Fantastic. Thanks so much, Kunal. So Rekha, can you switch on your screen? Quick closing remarks, and then we close this interview.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Kunal, for this, I think, very insightful and thought-provoking session, I would say. I think you've left a lot of food for thought in the minds of in my mind, and I'm sure in the minds of viewers. And I think there are all difficult problems to solve, but I think we need to make a start by at least thinking through it and seeing, what we can, at least each one can do in their own, limited way. So thank you so much, Kunal, and thank you very much to all our viewers who have joined us today. Thank you, Aashay and Anup.
Thanks so much. Thank you, Kunal. We'll send you the recording as well as the summary shortly.
Okay.
And thank you to Ekta and Ankit as well for making this happen. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.